Hello everybody. If this is a hobby that you want to get into, you got to expect that you're going to get a lot of strange looks. Velocity ramping is where in the output video it results in looking like the camera is stationary and then slowly starts gathering speed until it comes up to peak speed, and then towards the end it'll slow down and gradually come to an end rather than just being a solid movement the entire time. Sometimes a solid movement is what you want. Sometimes you want to see the camera sitting still and then slowly pick up and start moving, however you want to do it. So that's what velocity ramping is all about, and what I like about Chronos is that it does it, and it does it in several different ways. What it is, I'm going to do a velocity ramped time lapse, and I'm going to go over, while this is running, I'm going to go over velocity ramping and try to help people who might not be familiar with what it is or how it works, figure out how it works and what exactly it does for you. I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently today because I'm going to let the Nikon be the timer. So I'm going to show you right now is another way that you can set this up in case you don't have a working shutter release. If you have one of these adapters that goes on top of the camera with the PC sync, you can plug it in and work it this way. So let's put that on, lock it in place. I'm going to turn on the camera. Right now it's exposing at, well, let's see, f4 at 1600, 800, okay, with ISO 100. This is the output to the camera. This is the input from an external source. So what it's going to do is it's going to sync up to the camera as the camera shoots. I'm going to go ahead and set this up though. I'm going to go to shots. It defaults at 360. I just like showing the process of doing this. Distance, it defaults at 34. I'm going to go ahead and go 35. Well, yeah, why not? And then ramp, we're going to do a symmetrical ramp. And what the purpose of this is to kind of show the difference between linear ramping and S-curved ramping. So I'm going to go with a 15% ramp. Start that, and it's going to put the ramp on the front and the back. No repeats or anything like that, and put on the slave. It's ready to go. So on the camera, go to menu, and then Nikon D7000 actually has an intervalometer built in. So I'm going to go to intervalometer, now off, intervalometer, now, and then I'm going to go 4 seconds between shots, 360 shots, which is the same as I have this set for, and then turn on or off. And right now I'm going to go ahead and select over. So this is on and waiting for a signal. I'm going to hit OK. Timer's active. That's the first shot. And let's see if I can get you to where you can see this. Okay, now watch. See, it moves just a little bit. And each time this moves, it's going to move a little bit further and a little bit further. And that's how it does the velocity ramping, by increasing the distance that it moves between every shot. So, what's new? First off, I'm working on a set of instructions on how to do all the electronics works, all the wiring and everything that has to happen inside the control box. I'm about 90%, 95% done with all the pictures and everything. I still have to put them all together. I have to write up instructions on what to do. I mean, I'm not really good. I'm going to hopefully do it as a PDF, but I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to that. So we'll see how that goes. Nothing else, a Word document, something. I want to put together a document, not a video this time, but a document with really detailed pictures explaining how everything's done. So anybody can start from the beginning and go through and wire one of these things up correctly. And then, you know, it'll make the process a lot easier for anybody who wants to make their own. Today I think we're going to cover some information about velocity ramping. There's two modes. I mean, everybody seems to want to do the S-curve velocity ramping, and I'll get into that, where Chronos does linear. I'm not convinced that in the output video that you will really see much of a difference. And in the end, it turned out it was easier to program. It didn't take up much space in the program, and it also allowed me to do different types of patterns where I can have symmetrical and asymmetrical velocity ramping. When I was doing linear, I was able to do shoot, move, shoot with linear velocity ramping, which I wasn't able to do on the first incarnation of Chronos, where it would just start and it would go until it got to the end and stop. I mean, there was no way to stop it, wait, shoot, and then repeat. So I came up with just some simple mathematics in order to achieve this, and I also thought, well, hell, you know, why make it just, you know, come up, then level off and come down? Why not have it just like start really slow and gain speed almost to the end and abruptly come to a stop? Or be able to set in a kind of an offset fashion, and that's where I started doing asymmetrical velocity ramping. And the result, I think, was pretty good. I'm really happy the way it turned out. And while it's a bit of a departure from the norm, I've used velocity ramp, like a S-curve, and I've used linear. I don't see much of a difference. Also, with linear, I found it really easy to predict what it's going to do. When I'm putting in a 75% for the offset ramp, I know what it's going to do right off the top of my head. When I was working with the S-curve type, I wasn't exactly sure how the modifier was going to affect it, except for, you know, on lower numbers it seemed to like go really quick. On higher numbers it took longer to gain speed. But understanding that, it was just a vague understanding, and I wasn't really able to pinpoint at what point is this going to hit full speed and what point is it going to start slowing down. So that's one benefit of linear. So at this point, let's go over a little bit about how it looks on paper when you're doing this, when you're doing the velocity ramping. So I'm a bit of a visual learner. Sometimes I've learned it's a lot easier to explain things if you have a picture in front of you. I could do a PowerPoint presentation, except for I don't know how to do a PowerPoint presentation. And considering I work on voice over IP and voice networks for a living, troubleshooting them, and I build motion control systems for fun on the side, I'm surprisingly computer illiterate. So I figured this would be the safest way that I can do this and pull it off. So here we have an example of what S-ramped looks like, okay? This is the distance, and I just have on here 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. That was if you're doing 360 shots. So it kind of gives you an idea of the distance this moved. In fact, this should actually probably not be this way. This should probably show 1 inch, 15, 30, 45, 60 inches or whatever, but this is the distance that's moved. This is the speed in which it goes. So as you see here, it starts out and it comes up with this nice arc, and then goes and it levels off, and then slows down to a crawl, and then eventually stops. This is your standard S-ramped curve. This is an example of a symmetrical ramp with linear. It starts out not moving, and then you start seeing over the course of X amount of frames rather than distance, the distance moved between frames rather than speed. So every shot, it moves a little bit further between each shot. So if you break it out, it almost looks like here's shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4, shot 5, shot 6, shot 7. So it gives you that expanding out to increase the speed and decrease the speed. So this would be an example of 25% symmetrical ramp. 25% of the way through, it hits full speed, levels out, and then slows down 25%, and then stops at the end. This is an example of symmetrical ramping, or 15%. So basically the same idea. 15% up, next, what is that, 70%, it's just straight even, and then drops at the last. So that just gives it like it's getting a little bit of a push to get started, and then just slows down to a stop at the end. This is asymmetrical ramping, and unfortunately the paper is really thin, so you get to see the stuff under it. Look at that, there it is, there it's not. Okay. This is if you did, like say, a 10% asymmetrical ramp. It's going to start out with very short movements, but by the time it hits the 10% mark through the routine, 10% of the frames, in which case it would be 36 frames, it's at full speed. And then it's slowly going to decrease until it hits the 360th frame, in which it's no longer moving. This is what I mean about predictability. So if I do an asymmetrical ramp at 10%, I know that on shot 36 out of 336 or 360 shots, that boom, that's where it has top speed. So I can gauge how to integrate other things into this if there's a certain effect I want. So say if I have a pan head and I want this thing to just go the other way. Let's go with like a 75% on this, okay? Say I want it to slowly come up, and at the 270 shot mark, I know it'll be hitting full speed. Say if I have a pan head or something, I can do a delay for 180 frames, and then from this point start adding in a ramp to make it to where the camera feels like it's slowly moving, and then as it gets towards the end, it just whips around. You know, so you can kind of figure out how to make little arc movements and stuff like that by doing this. So here's another example. You know exactly when it's going to hit its top speed. Now, not only is this the 75th% frame in it, which is 270, but in the video, if this is a 12-second video, this is 0 seconds, 4 seconds, 8 seconds. Well, okay, I'm dumb. 3, 6, 9, 12. So I know 9 seconds into it is going to be where it's hitting this peak speed, and the last 3 seconds it's going to drop speed. This is what I mean about predictability. You can understand what it's going to do and predict the results, rather than putting in a number, say between like 5 and 95, and not having a clear idea of exactly what's going to happen in the output. Otherwise, just knowing that somehow it's a little bit more aggressive. Also in this, I still come out with my target of 360 shots every time. It will complete the whole movement in 360 shots, so that makes it easier for me to predict how long the video is going to be and how much time I have to work with. Of course, I can do any amount of shots, all the way up to 9,999 on any one single routine. So I hope that that was helpful, in the least. Like I said, anytime I was using the S-curve ramping, and this is because I didn't design the S-curve ramping system I used. Basically, I had the Lady Automotive Shield, and there is a library you can get and download. In my first version of Chronos, I was using a lot of code that I just borrowed. It's out there, it's available, it's open source, it's the purpose of it. However, not understanding it meant I had a hard time adapting it. And when I actually started playing around with the linear ramping, I was nervous at first. Well, is this going to look as good? And then my fears went away, and I was more than happy with the way that the linear ramping went. Like I said, in the future versions of Chronos, I'd like to offer an option of S-curve ramping in case you want to do that. But right now, it's not on there. And that's probably not something I'm going to be doing for quite a bit. Oh yeah, correction from last time. I said that I was using Tiffin neutral density filters. It turns out they're not actually Tiffin filters. It was actually a Dolcia, D-O-L-C-I-A. It's about $50 on Amazon, and they had a heck of a lead time. I had to wait about a month to get them because they're short in supply. But it comes with a 3, a 6, and a 9-stop neutral density filter. They all fit on each other. They work fantastic, and it gives you a lot of stopping power. So I think that's it. Next time, I think I'm going to go over the differences between a belt-driven design versus a lead screw-driven design, because there's not a lot of lead screw-driven designs out there. In fact, the only one I know of that's really been made available is Chronos. Everything else is belt-driven. There's a reason I went through a lead screw design. It runs differently, and I'm not going to get into that this time, but I'll get into it next time to help explain that. And then if you're looking at systems and you're trying to decide which one you want to do, or if you want to build your own, or what kind of setup you want to do, this will help you figure that out and maybe help you arrange your priorities. Also on that, I'm hoping to discuss stepper motors versus DC motors, and we'll see the differences between them, the advantages of one versus the other, and kind of get a better idea on that front as well. Go out and do some time lapse. It's a great hobby. It's a lot of fun, and you get really used to very strange looks that people give you as you carry this stuff around. So happy shooting.